Okay, so excuse me, we are working in the shop today on our, hold on, take two. All right, I had a frog in my throat there. I had to clear myself. Didn't want to do it on camera. Anyhow, we are working on our 1970 Honda N600 with the sport bike engine. This is a Yamaha FZR engine, and I just happen to have a spare Yamaha FZR engine for parts here on the floor. The one that's running is in the car. I've been having some fuel issues. I've been having a lot of fuel issues. Runs great, but if it idles for more than a minute, it starts to flood. And I have worked really hard to get the correct fuel pressure. Most motorcycles have 1.5 pounds of fuel pressure, possibly 2. This car obviously has a tank in the back, and there's a fuel pump in the back that is a 3 to 5 pound pump, although I was having too much fuel pressure. So I had to put a return line in the system to bleed off some of the fuel pressure, and I'm using the regulator to actually control the amount of bleed. Well, that makes sense to you. If you have one line that comes from the tank to the carburetors, that's called a deadhead system. It's a one-way system. If you have a return line, the fuel circulates, and I can control the low amount of pressure a lot better. So I've got a 0 to 15 pound gauge here. I've got a regulator, I've got a return line, and I'm still having overflow problems. The carburetors are just loose here. Now, I don't know if I explain this to you or not. If you look at this core engine here, see the Yamaha that's on here? See how that's slanted? If I tip this engine up just a little bit, about like that, that Yamaha becomes horizontal. So when this engine was in the bike, the cylinders were canted toward the down part of the frame. In other words, this was not a inline 4-cylinder engine sticking straight up. This was a semi leaning over 4-cylinder. And the carburetors that are on this thing are called semi-downdraft carburetors. And I think my problem is because I installed the engine in the car straight up. In other words, the valve cover is straight up. It's not leaning forward. The carburetors are fuels coming out of these air bleed holes. I've got to effectively get the carburetors in more of a horizontal position. I've got to rotate them about like this. So to do that, I've got to make adapters. So I'm going through my Volkswagen header kits, and I'm noticing that these flanges are about the right style. And what I'm doing is I'm using the core engine here to mock up these little angles. These are little mandrel bent angles. I think they're, I don't know what they are, 45, something like that. So I'm going to level those, get them flat, and then I'm going to weld another flange on here like this, so I can then mount the carburetor rubber boots on there. So it's going to look something like, let me grab it. This is our carburetor clamp, something like that. There'll be a little longer runner length, but the carburetors will be much more horizontal. So it's taken a little while. I've got to, engineer all the stuff. Nobody's done it before. There's no kit I can buy. So I'm thinking I can bolt that to this flange, weld that flange to that angle, and weld the angle then to this flange, and I should be good. And make sure everything's sealed. And I should have carburetors that are then semi-downdraft. In other words, they'll be in this type of location. And I hope that'll cure my flooding. If not, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'll have to get creative with some type of a positive overflow. In other words, use another pump to overflow from the carburetors back to the tank, which I'm prepared to do. But so that's what's going on with a little N600, a little teething problem, a little engineering on a Saturday. So we got our core engine as a mock-up, got our car as the truth right there. We're gonna make sure it can work. Oh, another thing I had to do is relocate all the stuff that was up here, the thermostat and all the coolant lines. I made new lines and ran them down underneath the carburetor so that I can, when I get these carburetors tipped up, I can fashion some type of air box with maybe a panel filter up here. Kind of cool. Maybe some ram air tubes or something that go across. We'll see. I want it to be really cool. All right, those are my thoughts. Those are my dreams. And now it's time to make them come together. Make it happen, Captain, as they say. It's the next step for our little Honda N600 project. Stella, the shop dog, really doesn't care what I'm doing.